The antiseptic smell of the hospital filled Vanessa Mitchell's nostrils as she paced the sterile corridor outside the pediatric intensive care unit. Her eyes, red-rimmed from crying, darted toward the door every time a nurse or doctor emerged. Inside that room, her 12-year-old son, Caleb, fought for his life, his body growing weaker with each passing hour. The car accident 3 days ago had been catastrophic, a drunk driver swerving into their lane on a rainy evening, leaving Caleb with severe internal bleeding and trauma to his liver. "Mrs. Mitchell?" Dr. Reynolds appeared, clipboard in hand, her expression grave beneath her silver-rimmed glasses. "We need to talk about Caleb's condition." Vanessa's heart plummeted. She gripped the edge of a nearby chair, steadying herself. Is he getting worse?" "I'm afraid so." Dr. Reynolds guided her to a small consultation room away from the bustle of the hospital corridor. "Caleb's internal bleeding has damaged his liver beyond repair. He needs a transplant, and he needs it soon." "A transplant?" Vanessa's voice cracked. "How soon is soon?" "Days, maybe a week at most." Dr. Reynolds flipped through Caleb's chart. "He's been moved to the top of the regional transplant list due to his critical condition, but finding a perfect match could take time. Time he doesn't have." Vanessa's fingers trembled as she pushed a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "What about a living donor? I read that people can donate part of their liver, and it grows back, right? Test me. I'll do it." Dr. Reynolds nodded slowly. "That's a possibility, but we'd need to ensure you're compatible. We'll run the tests immediately." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of blood draws, scans, and consultations. Vanessa barely left Caleb's bedside, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest beneath the hospital blanket, his skin jaundiced and his body connected to a terrifying array of tubes and monitors. His dark hair, so like his father's, lay matted against the pillow. Jack would have known what to do, Vanessa thought bitterly. But Jack had been gone for 3 years now, walking out on them for a new life with his 20-something assistant, leaving Vanessa to raise their son alone while working 2 jobs to keep them afloat. "Mom?" Caleb's voice, weak but alert, pulled Vanessa from her thoughts. "Are they going to fix me?" She squeezed his hand, forcing a smile. "You bet they are, buddy. The doctors are amazing here. And guess what? They're testing me right now to see if I can give you a piece of my liver." "Like inside me?" His eyes widened. "That's kind of gross, Mom." A laugh bubbled up unexpectedly. "Yeah, well, that's what moms do. Gross stuff to take care of their kids." His smile faded as a spasm of pain crossed his face. Vanessa pressed the call button, and a nurse quickly appeared to adjust his medication. As Caleb drifted back to sleep, Vanessa's phone buzzed with a text from her sister Diane, offering to bring fresh clothes and asking for updates. Vanessa hadn't even told her about the transplant possibility yet. Just as she finished texting back, Dr. Reynolds entered the room, her face grim. "Mrs. Mitchell, can I speak with you outside?" In the hallway, the doctor's words hit like physical blows. "I'm sorry, but you're not a compatible donor for Caleb. Your blood type is compatible, but the tissue typing shows markers that would likely lead to rejection." "There has to be something else," Vanessa pleaded. "What about my sister? Or Jack's family? We can certainly test them, but given the rarity of Caleb's particular blood and tissue type combination, it's unlikely they'll match either. It appears he inherited some rare markers from his father." Vanessa's jaw clenched. "His father is unreachable. He took a job in Dubai 3 years ago and barely keeps in touch." Dr. Reynolds placed a comforting hand on Vanessa's arm. "We'll keep searching the donor registry, and if there are any other family members who might be willing to test, we should try them as well. Every possibility helps." Over the next 48 hours, Vanessa's sister and 2 cousins were tested. All incompatible. Caleb's condition deteriorated further, his skin taking on a deeper yellow hue, his periods of consciousness becoming briefer and more confused. Vanessa hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch, surviving on vending machine coffee and the occasional sandwich forced upon her by hospital staff. It was during one of these coffee runs that Vanessa overheard a conversation that made her freeze in place. 2 nurses were discussing the hospital's upcoming charity gala, and a name caught her attention. Jackson Hayes, CEO of Meridian Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest employers in their mid-sized Pennsylvania town. "He's supposed to be announcing a major donation to the children's wing," one nurse said. "Dr. Reynolds has been working on him for months to fund the new treatment center." Vanessa's mind whirled. Jackson Hayes. Hayes, not Mitchell. Jack had changed his surname back to his mother's maiden name after their divorce, claiming it would help him professionally to distance himself from his previous life. She'd thought it cruel at the time, just one more way to erase the 13 years they'd spent together. But now it was making horrific sense why Caleb's tissue type was so rare. Jack wasn't in Dubai. He hadn't been for at least a year, based on the local news coverage of his appointment as CEO of Meridian. He had been here in the same town, deliberately staying away from his son while building his corporate empire. With shaking hands, Vanessa approached the nurse's station. "When is Mr. Hayes expected at the hospital for the gala?" "It's tonight," the charge nurse replied. "He's actually meeting with administration in about an hour for a final walkthrough." Vanessa thanked her and hurried back to Caleb's room. She couldn't leave him, not now, but Jackson Hayes might be Caleb's only hope. Their son was dying and his father was in the same building, probably completely unaware. She called Dr. Reynolds. "I think I know someone who might be a match for Caleb," Vanessa explained, her voice tight with emotion. "His father, Jackson Hayes." A long pause followed. "The CEO of Meridian Pharmaceuticals is Caleb's father?" Dr. Reynolds asked carefully. "Yes. We were married for 13 years. He changed his name after our divorce. Most people here wouldn't know the connection." "Mrs. Mitchell, I'll handle this discreetly. If he's here today, I can arrange to speak with him privately." An hour later, Vanessa was sitting beside Caleb when a soft knock came at the door. Dr. Reynolds entered, followed by a tall man in an immaculately tailored suit. Jackson Hayes had aged well in the 3 years since she'd seen him, a touch of distinguished silver at his temples, his jaw still sharp, his posture confident. But his face had drained of color as he stared at the small figure in the hospital bed. "You said it was urgent, Doctor, but you didn't mention—" His eyes flicked from Caleb to Vanessa, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his face. "Mr. Hayes, I apologize for the abrupt nature of this meeting, but time is of the essence," Dr. Reynolds said. "Caleb needs a liver transplant immediately, and you might be his only hope as a living donor." Jackson's expression hardened. "I don't understand. Surely there are donors on the registry or—" "There's no time," Vanessa interrupted, rising from her chair. "He has a rare combination of markers in his blood. I'm not a match. No one else we've tested is a match. He needs this transplant or he'll die, and you might be the only person who can save him." The beeping of the monitors seemed to grow louder in the silence that followed. Jackson looked at his son, truly looked at him, perhaps for the first time in years. The boy's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, his skin sallow, dark circles beneath his eyes. "Test me," Jackson said finally, turning to Dr. Reynolds. "Whatever needs to be done, do it now." The hospital's laboratory worked with unprecedented speed. Perhaps it was Dr. Reynolds' urgent instructions, or perhaps it was the influence of having the CEO of Meridian Pharmaceuticals as the potential donor. Whatever the reason, Jackson Hayes' blood and tissue compatibility results were ready within hours, rather than the usual days. Vanessa sat alone in the hospital cafeteria, absently stirring a cup of lukewarm coffee. She'd left Caleb's room when Jackson insisted on staying with him while she took a break. The tension between them had been palpable, years of unspoken resentment and hurt hanging in the air. Yet seeing Jackson sitting beside their son's bed, awkwardly telling him about the new baseball stadium downtown, had stirred something unexpected within her, a bittersweet reminder of what their family had once been. "Mind if I join you?" Vanessa looked up to find Lisa, one of the regular nurses from Caleb's floor. The young woman's presence was a welcome distraction. "Please," Vanessa gestured to the empty chair. "Any news?" Lisa shook her head. "Dr. Reynolds is still reviewing the results with the transplant team, but I wanted to check how you're holding up." Vanessa laughed hollowly. "Honestly? I don't know. 3 days ago, my biggest worry was Caleb's upcoming math test. Now—" She trailed off, blinking back tears. "And seeing Jack again after all this time, it's complicated." "I can only imagine," Lisa replied gently. "The whole floor is buzzing about it. Not many people knew Jackson Hayes had a son." "He made sure of that," Vanessa said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "When we divorced, he said having a family didn't fit his career trajectory. Said it would be better for everyone if he made a clean break." Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "He sends checks for child support, always more than required. But he hasn't seen Caleb in 3 years, not even on birthdays. Lisa's expression softened with sympathy. That must have been incredibly hard on both of you. The worst part was watching Caleb wait by the window on days when Jack had promised to call or visit. Eventually, he stopped asking about his dad altogether. Vanessa sighed. I tried to shield him from the hurt, but kids know, they always know. The nurse nodded, then glanced at her watch. I should get back to the floor, but Mrs. Mitchell, Vanessa, try to take care of yourself too. Caleb needs you strong. After Lisa left, Vanessa remained at the table, memories washing over her like waves. She and Jackson had met in college, she studying elementary education, he in pre-med before switching to business. They'd married young, had Caleb a few years later. For a decade, they'd been happy, or so she'd thought. Jackson had been ambitious but present, coaching Caleb's t-ball team and making pancakes on Sunday mornings. Then came the promotion that changed everything. Longer hours, business trips, growing distance. When Vanessa found the text messages between Jackson and his assistant, it had merely confirmed what she already suspected. Her husband had found a life he preferred over the one they'd built together. Her phone buzzed with a text from Diane. On my way with dinner and fresh clothes. Hang in there, sis. Vanessa texted back her thanks and gathered her things. As she headed back toward the pediatric ICU, she spotted Jackson and Dr. Reynolds in intense conversation at the end of the hallway. Jackson's face was ashen, his normally confident posture slumped. Dr. Reynolds placed a hand on his arm, speaking earnestly. Something was wrong. Vanessa approached quickly. What is it? What's happened? Dr. Reynolds turned, her expression carefully neutral. Mrs. Mitchell, we were just discussing the test results. And? Vanessa looked between them. Is he a match? Yes, Jackson answered, his voice strained. I'm a match, but there's a complication. Dr. Reynolds gestured toward a nearby consultation room. Let's discuss this privately. Inside the small room with its muted beige walls and uncomfortable chairs, Dr. Reynolds explained the situation. Mr. Hayes is indeed compatible with Caleb for a liver donation. However, during our routine screening, we discovered an anomaly in his blood work that required further investigation. Vanessa's heart sank. What kind of anomaly? Jackson ran a hand over his face. They found elevated liver enzymes. Apparently, I have early-stage liver disease myself. Non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, NASH, Dr. Reynolds clarified. It's a form of fatty liver disease that can progress to more serious conditions if untreated. In Mr. Hayes' case, it appears to be in the early stages, but it makes him ineligible as a living donor. The hope that had been building inside Vanessa crumbled. So we're back to square one, waiting for a miracle. Not exactly, Dr. Reynolds said carefully. There's another option, but it's unconventional. Mr. Hayes has agreed to be tested for bone marrow compatibility. Vanessa frowned. Bone marrow? But Caleb needs a liver. Yes, but we've been exploring an experimental protocol for patients in Caleb's situation, Dr. Reynolds explained. A successful bone marrow transplant could help support his immune function while we continue to search for a liver donor. It might buy him precious time, weeks, possibly even months. It's not a cure, Jackson added quietly, but it's something I can actually do for him. The raw emotion in his voice caught Vanessa off guard. This wasn't the cold, calculated man who had walked away from their family. For the first time in years, she glimpsed the Jackson she had once loved, the one who had wept when holding newborn Caleb. How soon would this happen? Vanessa asked. We'd need to start preparing Caleb immediately, Dr. Reynolds replied. The procedure itself could happen within 48 hours. Jackson stood abruptly. I have meetings to reschedule and arrangements to make. I'll be back in the morning for whatever additional testing you need. He paused at the door, looking back at Vanessa. I know this doesn't fix anything between us, but I swear I'll do whatever it takes to help him. After he left, Vanessa turned to Dr. Reynolds. How serious is this liver condition he has? The doctor hesitated. With proper management, many patients with early NASH can halt or reverse the progression. But left untreated, it can lead to cirrhosis or liver failure. And he never knew? It appears not. Many people with early liver disease show no symptoms. It's often discovered incidentally, as in this case. Vanessa returned to Caleb's room, her mind spinning. When she entered, she found her son awake and more alert than he'd been in days. Hey, Mom, he said weakly. Dad was here, not like in a dream or something. He was really here. Vanessa sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing his hair. I know, buddy. He's going to help you get better. Caleb's eyes, so like his father's, studied her face. He said he messed up by staying away. Said it was the biggest mistake of his life. Did he now? Vanessa kept her tone neutral, unsure how to navigate these waters. Yeah. He showed me pictures of his new company on his phone. They make medicine and stuff. He said maybe someday I could come see it. Caleb's expression grew serious. Mom, is Dad sick too? I heard the nurses talking. Vanessa sighed. Trust a 12-year-old to pick up on everything. He has some health issues they just discovered, but nothing you need to worry about right now. The important thing is focusing on getting you better. Caleb nodded, then winced as pain flared. Vanessa quickly pressed the button for medication. As the pain relief flowed through his IV, his eyelids grew heavy. Mom, he murmured sleepily. I'm glad Dad came back. Vanessa sat with him until he fell asleep, her emotions a tangled mess. Jackson's unexpected reappearance in their lives had reopened old wounds, yet seeing him with Caleb had awakened memories she'd tried to bury. More complicated still was the revelation of his illness, a strange, twisted irony that the man who might save their son was battling his own health crisis. Her sister Diane arrived with a duffel bag of fresh clothes and containers of homemade soup. How's our boy doing? She whispered, setting the food down. Hanging in there, Vanessa replied. There's been a development. Jack is here. Diane's eyes widened. Jack, as in your ex-husband Jack, the one who fell off the face of the earth? The very same. Turns out he's been in town for over a year. He's the CEO of Meridian now. Wait, Jackson Hayes is your Jack. How did I not make that connection? Diane looked stunned. And he's actually helping. It's complicated, Vanessa said, and proceeded to explain the situation in hushed tones. As she spoke, a text message appeared on her phone. From Jackson. Meeting with Dr. Reynolds at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Results from additional testing. She says you should be there. Vanessa showed the message to Diane, who squeezed her hand supportively. Whatever happens next, you're not alone in this. I'm here, and apparently so is Jack. For the first time in days, Vanessa felt a flicker of hope. It was fragile and uncertain, but it was there, a tiny light in the darkness that had enveloped her since the accident. The morning light filtered through the blinds of Dr. Reynolds' office as Vanessa arrived precisely at 7. She'd spent another night in the uncomfortable recliner beside Caleb's bed, waking every hour to check on him. His condition had stabilized somewhat overnight, a small mercy that the nurse attributed to an adjustment in his medication. Jackson was already there, looking far less polished than the day before. His expensive suit had been replaced by jeans and a navy sweater, and the shadow of stubble darkened his jaw. He stood when Vanessa entered, offering her the chair closer to the doctor's desk. How is he? Jackson asked. About the same, Vanessa replied, setting her coffee on the edge of the desk. He asked about you this morning. Before Jackson could respond, Dr. Reynolds entered, accompanied by another physician Vanessa hadn't met before. Mrs. Mitchell, Mr. Hayes, this is Dr. Mason from our hematology department. He's been reviewing the bone marrow compatibility results. Dr. Mason, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, nodded in greeting. I've been consulting with Dr. Reynolds on Caleb's case. We've analyzed the preliminary results from Mr. Hayes's bone marrow typing. And? Jackson leaned forward anxiously. Dr. Mason and Dr. Reynolds exchanged a look that made Vanessa's stomach knot. There's no easy way to say this, Dr. Mason began. The testing revealed something unexpected. Mr. Hayes, you are not a bone marrow match for Caleb. Jackson's brow furrowed. But you said I was compatible yesterday. How could that change? The initial blood type compatibility was correct, Dr. Reynolds explained gently. But the more detailed HLA typing for bone marrow shows that you and Caleb are not genetically compatible in the way we would expect for a biological father and son. A heavy silence filled the room as the implication of her words sank in. Vanessa felt the blood drain from her face. What exactly are you saying? Jackson's voice was dangerously quiet. Dr. Mason cleared his throat. Based on the genetic markers we've analyzed, there is less than a 1% chance that you are Caleb's biological father. Vanessa's world tilted sideways. That's impossible, she whispered. There has to be a mistake. Jackson turned to her, his expression a storm of confusion and accusation. Is there something you need to tell me, Vanessa? No. Her denial was immediate and vehement. I never... Jack, you know I wouldn't... Dr. Reynolds raised a hand. Before this goes any further, I should mention that there could be other explanations. Rare genetic conditions, chimerism, lab errors, though we've double-checked the results. Run the tests again, Jackson demanded. There has to be some mistake. We already have, Dr. Mason replied. The results were consistent. Jackson stood abruptly, pacing the small office. 12 years. 12 years I've believed. He stopped, turning to Vanessa. Who is he then? Who's Caleb's father? The accusation in his voice ignited something fierce within her. I have never been unfaithful to you, Jack. Not once in our marriage. If these tests are saying you're not Caleb's father, then something else is going on, something these doctors aren't seeing. Dr. Reynolds interjected calmly. Mrs. Mitchell, was Caleb conceived naturally or through any form of assisted reproduction? Naturally, Vanessa answered firmly, then paused as a memory surfaced. Although we had been trying for almost 2 years, Jack had some tests done. Jackson stopped pacing. The low sperm count, he said slowly. Dr. Whitman recommended that procedure to improve our chances. What was it called? Intrauterine insemination, Vanessa supplied. But they used your sample, Jack. We were both there that day. A look of realization dawned on Dr. Reynolds' face. Mrs. Mitchell, what facility performed this procedure? Riverside Fertility Clinic. It closed years ago. Dr. Reynolds and Dr. Mason exchanged significant glances. Riverside was involved in a scandal about 8 years ago, Dr. Mason explained. There were allegations of sample mix-ups and improper procedures. The clinic shut down before any formal investigation was completed. The implications hung in the air like a thundercloud. Jackson sank back into his chair, running his hands through his hair. So what you're saying is that Caleb could be the biological son of some stranger, someone whose sample got mixed up with mine. It's a possibility, Dr. Reynolds admitted, and one that has significant implications for Caleb's treatment. If we could locate the biological father, he might be a compatible donor. Vanessa felt as though she were drowning. But how would we even begin to find this person? The clinic is gone, the records probably destroyed. Actually, Doctor, Mason said thoughtfully, after Riverside closed, all their medical records were legally required to be transferred to the State Medical Board. They might still exist in some archive. Then we need to access them immediately, Jackson stated with renewed purpose. I have contacts at the State Health Department who can expedite this. Mr. Hayes, Dr. Reynolds cautioned, those records would be strictly confidential. Even with your connections, my son is dying, Jackson cut her off, his voice breaking on the word son. I don't care what rules we have to bend. If there's even a chance of finding a donor this way, we have to try. Vanessa watched him with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. Despite the shocking revelation, Jackson was still referring to Caleb as his son, still fighting for him. It was more than she had dared to hope for. There's something else we should discuss, Dr. Mason said. Given the circumstances, we should expand our search for potential donors. Are there any male relatives on either side who might be willing to be tested? Sometimes even more distant relations can have compatible markers. Vanessa shook her head. My father passed away years ago and I only have a sister. Jack's father is also deceased, right? Jackson nodded grimly. And I'm an only child, but I have an uncle, my father's brother, Richard. He lives in Boston. It's worth trying, Dr. E. Reynolds agreed. The more potential donors we test, the better our chances. As the doctors continued discussing options, Vanessa's phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Caleb asking for you. Seems agitated. I need to get back to Caleb, Vanessa said, standing quickly. He's asking for me. Jackson rose as well. I'll make those calls about the Riverside records, and I'll contact my uncle right away. They walked in tense silence toward Caleb's room. Just before they reached the door, Vanessa touched Jackson's arm, stopping him. Jack, I swear to you that I never... I know, he interrupted, his voice low. I believe you, Vanessa. After the initial shock, it makes sense. The timing, the clinic, and looking at Caleb now, I can see he never really looked like me or my side of the family. I just didn't want to see it before. He's still your son, Vanessa said fiercely. You raised him for 9 years. Biology doesn't change that. A complex emotion crossed Jackson's face. I know, and that's why I walked away. because deep down I think I suspected something wasn't right, and I was too much of a coward to face it. I used the affair as an excuse, but the truth is, I'd been pulling away long before that, looking for reasons to distance myself because something felt off. You left because you thought he might not be yours? Vanessa's voice rose in disbelief. That's worse, Jack, not better. I know, he said, his expression haunted. Believe me, I know, but right now none of that matters. The only thing that matters is saving Caleb. Inside the room, they found Caleb awake and restless, with Diane trying to distract him with a game on her tablet. His face brightened when he saw them both. Dad, Mom said you'd come back today. Then, noticing their expressions, his smile faltered. What's wrong? Did the tests come back bad? Jackson moved to his side, gently ruffling his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Vanessa's heart ache. We're still figuring things out, buddy. But I'm not going anywhere. As Jackson began telling Caleb about his plan to call in his uncle for testing, Vanessa drew Diane aside. There's been a complication, she whispered, and quickly outlined the shocking revelation from that morning's meeting. Diane's eyes widened. Oh my God, Van, that's insane. But wait, doesn't this mean Jack isn't on the hook for child support anymore? If he's not the biological father, that's what you're worried about right now? Vanessa hissed incredulously. No, of course not, Diane backpedaled. I just meant, it's actually amazing that he's still here, still helping after everything. Vanessa glanced over at Jackson, who was now showing Caleb something on his phone, their heads bent together in identical poses, despite their lack of genetic connection. Yeah, she admitted softly, it is. Dr. Reynolds appeared at the door, her expression urgent. Mr. Hayes? There's a call for you at the nurse's station. It's someone from the state health department. Jackson squeezed Caleb's shoulder. I'll be right back, kiddo. Promise? Caleb asked, suddenly looking much younger than his 12 years. Promise, Jackson replied firmly. Vanessa followed Jackson and Dr. Reynolds into the hallway, her heart pounding. It seemed impossible that the health department could have information so quickly. The nurse handed Jackson the phone. Vanessa watched as he listened, his expression shifting from hope to confusion to shock in rapid succession. Are you absolutely certain? He asked the caller. Yes. Yes, I understand. Thank you. When he hung up, he turned to Vanessa and Dr. Reynolds, his face ashen. They found the records from Riverside, he said hoarsely, and they know exactly whose sample was used instead of mine. Whose? Vanessa asked, though something in his expression told her the answer would change everything. William Pearson, Jackson said, the founder and former CEO of Meridian Pharmaceuticals, the man who hired me 15 years ago and personally groomed me to take over when he retired. The implications crashed over Vanessa like a wave. Your mentor is Caleb's biological father? Not just my mentor, Jackson said, his voice hollow with disbelief. He's also been diagnosed with the same liver condition I have, NASH. It runs in his family. That's why he started Meridian in the first place, to research treatments for liver disease. William Pearson arrived at the hospital within 2 hours of Jackson's call, a testament to the urgency of the situation and perhaps to the shocking news he'd received. At 72, he was still an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with a full head of silver hair and piercing blue eyes that Vanessa realized with a jolt were eerily similar to Caleb's. Jackson made the introductions in Dr. Reynolds' office, the tension palpable as William shook Vanessa's hand. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, his deep voice tinged with emotion. I cannot begin to express how sorry I am about this situation. I had absolutely no idea. Vanessa studied the man who was, apparently, her son's biological father. Did you donate to Riverside Fertility Clinic? William nodded solemnly. About 20 years ago, when my wife and I were trying to have a child, after multiple miscarriages, we learned she couldn't carry to term. We were considering surrogacy and banked samples. He hesitated. My wife passed away before we could proceed, and I never went back for the samples. I assumed they had been destroyed long ago. Clearly they weren't, Jackson said, his voice carefully neutral. William's gaze shifted between them. Jackson told me everything on the phone. I've already consented to any testing needed. If there's any chance I can help Caleb, I want to do it. Dr. Reynolds, who had been quietly observing the interaction, stepped forward. Mr. Pearson, given your age and Jackson's mention of your own NASH diagnosis, We'll need to conduct thorough evaluations to determine if you're a suitable donor. However, time is of the essence." "I understand," William replied. "My condition is well managed with medication, and my last scan showed minimal progression. I believe I'm healthy enough to donate, but I defer to your medical judgment." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of tests and consultations. Vanessa divided her time between Caleb's bedside and the waiting room, where Jackson and William sat in uncomfortable silence, united by concern for a boy who connected them in ways none could have imagined. By evening, Dr. Reynolds had preliminary results. She gathered them in the consultation room once more. "The good news is that Mr. Pearson is a match for Caleb, both in blood type and tissue markers," she began. "The concerning news is that the NASH, while currently stable, does present some risks for liver donation." "What kind of risks?" Vanessa asked, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "For Mr. Pearson, the surgery and recovery would be more taxing than for a younger, completely healthy donor. There's also a small chance that the remaining portion of his liver might not regenerate optimally due to the underlying condition." William leaned forward. "And for Caleb? Would he inherit this condition from me?" Dr. Reynolds hesitated. "NASH has both genetic and environmental components. While he might have a predisposition, it's not a certainty. However, receiving a portion of liver that has early NASH changes is not ideal." "Are there alternatives?" Jackson asked. "What about the transplant list?" "Caleb remains at the top of the regional list," Dr. Reynolds confirmed. "But we're still looking at days, possibly longer, and his condition is deteriorating rapidly." William stood up decisively. "Then it's not really a choice, is it? I'm willing to proceed with the donation." "Mr. Pearson," Dr. Reynolds cautioned, "you need to understand the full risks to yourself. This is major surgery with a lengthy recovery." "I understand perfectly," William replied, a quiet determination in his voice. "I've lived a full life. That boy deserves the chance to live his." He turned to Vanessa. "With your permission, of course." Vanessa felt tears welling in her eyes. This man, a stranger until hours ago, was offering to risk his life for her son. For his biological son, he never knew existed. "Thank you," she managed to whisper. The surgery was scheduled for first thing the next morning. As the medical team began preparations, Vanessa took the opportunity to speak with Caleb, who had been told only that they had found a matching donor. "So it's not Dad?" Caleb asked, processing the information. "It's his old boss?" Vanessa sat on the edge of his bed, choosing her words carefully. "It's a bit more complicated than that, honey. Mr. Pearson's, well, there was a mix-up many years ago before you were born. It turns out that biologically he's related to you." Caleb's brow furrowed. "Like, he's actually my dad? Like, biologically or whatever?" "Yes," Vanessa admitted, watching his face closely. "But Jack raised you. He's your dad in all the ways that matter." Caleb was quiet for a long moment, his fingers picking at the edge of his blanket. "Is that why Dad left us? Because he found out?" "No, sweetheart," Vanessa said firmly. "He didn't know until yesterday. No one did." "Does this mean I have to call Mr. Pearson Dad now?" Despite everything, Vanessa felt a smile tug at her lips. "No, you don't have to call him anything you don't want to. This doesn't change who you are or who your family is." Caleb nodded, seeming relieved. "Can I meet him before the surgery?" William Pearson entered Caleb's room an hour later, visibly nervous despite his commanding presence. Jackson accompanied him, having apparently come to some unspoken truce with the older man. "Hello, Caleb," William said, approaching the bed cautiously. "It's good to meet you." Caleb studied him with open curiosity. "You're going to give me part of your liver?" William smiled. "That's the plan. The doctors tell me you only need a piece of it, and the rest will grow back for both of us like lizard tails." "Cool," Caleb responded, a hint of his usual enthusiasm breaking through his fatigue. "Does it hurt?" "I imagine it will," William answered honestly. "But they have good medicine for that, and it's worth it." As they continued talking, Vanessa noticed Jackson watching the interaction with a complex expression, part wistfulness, part resolution. He caught her gaze and motioned toward the hallway. Outside, he leaned against the wall, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "It's strange, seeing them together. The resemblance is actually striking." "I noticed that too," Vanessa admitted. "His eyes, especially." "I've been thinking," Jackson said hesitantly, "after this is all over and Caleb is recovered, I'd like to be part of his life again. If you're both open to that. Vanessa studied him, this man who had broken her heart and abandoned their son, yet who had also been the first to volunteer as a donor when Caleb's life hung in the balance. Why now, Jack? Is it because you feel guilty? Partly, he acknowledged, but it's more than that. These past few days, being here, seeing him again, I realized what I threw away. Biology or not, he's my son. I was there when he was born. I taught him to ride a bike. I helped him with his first science project. His voice cracked. I've missed 3 years of his life because I was a coward, and I don't want to miss any more. Before Vanessa could respond, Dr. Reynolds approached with final instructions for the pre-surgery procedures. The conversation would have to wait. The night passed with agonizing slowness. William was taken to pre-op at 5 in the morning, with Caleb scheduled to follow an hour later. Vanessa sat by her son's bedside, holding his hand as he drifted in and out of sleep, his body weakened by the disease ravaging his liver. "Mom," he murmured during one lucid moment, "what if it doesn't work?" Vanessa squeezed his hand. "It will work. You've got the best doctors and Mr. Pearson is a perfect match. This time tomorrow you'll be on the road to recovery. And Jack, he'll still be around, right?" He promised. "Yes," Vanessa assured him. "He promised me too." When the time came to move Caleb to pre-op, Vanessa walked alongside the gurney, Jackson on the other side. At the doors where they could go no further, they both bent to kiss his forehead. "See you soon, buddy," Jackson whispered. "We'll be right here when you wake up." The waiting room became their world for the next 9 hours. Diane arrived with coffee and sandwiches that went largely untouched. Jackson's assistant appeared briefly with documents requiring his signature, only to be waved away. Dr. Reynolds provided updates hourly. William's portion of the surgery had been completed successfully. The transplant team was now working on Caleb. Everything was proceeding as expected. It was nearly 7 in the evening when Dr. Reynolds finally emerged, surgical cap still on, exhaustion evident in the lines of her face, but a smile breaking through. "Both surgeries went well," she announced. "Mr. Pearson is in recovery and stable. The portion of liver we transplanted to Caleb looks excellent. His body is accepting it so far, though we'll be monitoring closely for signs of rejection." The relief that flooded through Vanessa was so intense she had to sit down. Jackson placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. "When can we see them?" he asked. "Mr. Pearson should be awake within the hour." "Caleb will take longer due to his weakened state, likely not until morning, but you can sit with him in the ICU once he's settled." 3 weeks later, Vanessa stood in the doorway of Caleb's hospital room, watching as her son laughed at something William was saying. The older man visited daily, bringing books on science and astronomy, subjects Caleb had recently developed an interest in. Today, Jackson was there as well. The three of them engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion about baseball statistics. Caleb's recovery had been remarkable. The new liver was functioning well, with no signs of rejection. Color had returned to his cheeks, and his energy increased daily. William, too, had recovered more quickly than expected, his determination seemingly accelerating his healing. The relationships between all of them remained complicated. William had expressed a desire to know Caleb better, but had been respectful of boundaries, never pushing for more than Vanessa or Caleb were comfortable with. Jackson had kept his promise, visiting regularly, and even taking Caleb for short walks around the hospital grounds as he regained his strength. And then there was the unexpected evolution of Vanessa's own feelings. The crisis had revealed a side of Jackson she thought was long gone, the dedicated father, the man who could set aside his pride for the sake of his child. Meanwhile, William's generosity and genuine care for Caleb had created a bond of gratitude and growing trust. "Everything okay?" Diane asked, joining her at the doorway. Vanessa nodded. "Just thinking about how much has changed. A month ago, I was a single mom raising a son whose father had abandoned us. Now Caleb has 2 fathers in his life, one who's rediscovering what it means to be a dad, and another who's learning for the first time." "And what about you?" Diane nudged her gently. "Jackson's been giving you those looks again." "It's not that simple," Vanessa sighed. "There's still a lot of hurt there. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't seeing him differently these days." Inside the room, Caleb caught sight of her and waved her in. "Mom, come settle this debate. Dad says the Yankees are overrated, But Mr. P says they're statistically the best franchise in history. Vanessa smiled at the easy way Caleb navigated his new reality, still calling Jackson Dad while developing his own relationship with William, whom he'd decided to call Mr. P. "Don't look at me," she laughed, entering the room. "I'm strictly a football fan, remember?" As the debate continued, Vanessa sat in the chair beside Jackson, their shoulders brushing lightly. He glanced at her, a question in his eyes, and she offered a small smile in return. They still had a long road ahead, all of them did. But for the first time in years, it felt like they were traveling in the same direction. Watching her son's animated face as he argued baseball with the two men who had, in different ways, given him life, Vanessa felt a profound sense of peace. From the depths of tragedy had emerged an unconventional family, one bound not just by blood or biology, but by choice, by sacrifice, and by love.